Hi there, welcome to Abe's Workshop. Today we're going to look at a bit of routine maintenance on the lathe. Lubrication, that sort of thing, general housekeeping, tidying things up, little bits of adjustment, things like that. I do a little bit of drilling and tapping in the compound slide, put some new larger bolts in the gib. I'll show you a bit of footage of that. And also, as the weather seems to have eventually broken, I mean, it's still not boiling down here in West Wales, but I take a little trip to the beach. So I got a bit of footage of Newgale Beach as well, which some of you might find interesting. And also, a rather strange property that's built right up on the cliff, and it's one of these eco houses. I'll show you a bit of footage of that as well. So, hope you enjoy it, guys. So let's start at the tailstock end, and we'll work our way forward to the headstock. Now, my tailstock is clocked up and it's absolutely fine. Now, first thing, have we got any play in the hand wheel? Well, we have actually got a slight amount of play. It's got an eye lock nut on the end. Still play. We don't want to make the hand wheel tight. I could maybe a little bit more. That's actually starting to go a little stiff there. As you can see, it'll balance itself. So back just a touch. Now it's got a much tidier action. Okay, so that's adjusted the hand wheel, or the tension on the hand wheel, which is the backlash in the thread, theoretically. Now I'll wind the quill right out. Clean the quill right down. Just have a look down in the bore, nice and clean. Just make sure that there's no dirt in there. Okay. So I'll put a bit of oil in the thread, bit of oil in the bore, bit of oil on the shaft, and refit the quill to the tailstock. You can see the oil is spreading all the way along. Now there is a key in the bottom of the tailstock, which is basically a screw that runs in the groove in the bottom that stops the quill rotating. But as you can see, I've got no movement, rotation in my quill, so that's, we'll call it good. Yeah, and smooth travel all the way. You can adjust the position of the lock handle. I'll just show you that. There is a nut on the bottom of the tailstock. We'll give that a clean while I've got it off. By rotating this nut independently of the clamp, you can adjust the position of the lock handle. So let's just demonstrate that. So that lock handle is actually quite a long way down at the moment. So if I tighten that nut up a little bit, I can make the lock point come just by rotating the nut a lot higher up. We could probably go a little more. Just by adjusting the nut on the underside of the tailstock, just within its clamp nut, adjusting the nut underneath, and you do have to do it from time to time as it does sort of work its way loose. But yeah, I mean, that's tailstock locked, unlocked, what have you. And while I've got it here, I'll just put a little bit of oil on the bed under the tailstock just to lubricate the underside. So that's the tailstock taken care of. You will see a grease nipple here, or an oil nipple on the end of the lead screw. I'll bring you in on that. So here we are, there is an oil nipple on the end of the lead screw. Now I've got this sort of piston oiler, piston oiler here, piston type, which works absolutely brilliantly for this sort of thing. I can push it down on the ball and a couple of squirts. However, with the lathe, they do supply this little oiler bottle. Now it has a cap on the end which you can remove, and it's got a cranked end on it. I don't know whether you can see that, but as you can see, it's got a cranked end on it, and that actually fits down into that ball very nicely. And it's actually, I know it all looks a bit Chinese, you know, cheap, cheerful little oil bottle, but it is actually quite effective for using on these little oil nipples. So I tend to keep this one purely for that purpose. So yeah, there's one here, and there are 6 up on the carriage, so we'll go to those next. Everything a fair clean around the place here, but there's one here which is underneath the compound, which I can get to, and I give them a few squirts. We'll do the other one, and you can actually see, if I move it out of the way, let's have a quick look, see if I can do that without moving the camera. You can see the oil has already come out from underneath, so it's doing its job. And again, I don't know whether you can pick it up, but there is oil on this backside as well. Okay, so that's those 2. Again, on the back corner, exactly the same. And there are 2. Let's just bring you in on that. Can't quite see the other one, but there are 2 again on the cross slide, so we'll give those a couple of squirts as well. And you simply push down on the ball with the end of the bottle, and you can hear the oil flowing through. While I got the carriage this far forward, there's my cross slide lead screw, and I'll just give that a bit of a squirt as well, and why not, won't do any harm to put any on the slides. So I'd run it right forward and off the end of the lead screw. Now actually, while I've got it here, let's talk about adjustment of backlash in the lead screw itself. You can probably see my lead screw moving there. Let me give you a better shot. As you can see, the whole lead screw, it is screwed completely out of the nut in the cross slide, but there is play there. So again, 13mm socket, and I can actually feel backlash longitudinally in that. Let's actually, crunch, didn't mean to do that. Let's actually bring it back on and measure the backlash, not only in the lead nut, but in the lead screw, using the DRO. I've just sat my DRO on the chuck temporarily, but I have pushed the E-stop on the lathe, so there's no way I'm going to start it up and get my DRO flying all over the place. So I've got my cross-slide clamp loose, which is the one I lock off, you know, during various operations. I haven't adjusted the hand wheel yet, and I'm getting, let's just push it right forward, 0.15. Okay, 0.15 of backlash, I think it shows up there. So if I just tighten the nut up, I'm going to wind it right off again. Okay, and I can feel backlash in there, so I'll just tighten the nut up on the end of the shaft. Well, that's too much, I've locked it up. I can still feel a little bit of resistance there. That's absolutely fine. Okay. Oh, we should stop doing that. Let's have a measure of the backlash now. Right forward. 0.1. Hang on. Actually, .07. So I've nearly halved, well, I just over halved the backlash. Now there is a form of adjustment screw here on the cross slide. By dropping an Allen key down into that hole and just maybe tweaking it slightly, you can there we are. I've done a few little tweaks. Bring you back to the DRO. Okay, and I'm down to, let's just set a 0.05, maybe a touch more. I was down to about 0.02. Still slightly, a little bit more. Oh. Yeah, I'm about 0.02, 0.03 now. Yeah, 0.02 back and forth. So, yeah, pretty much down to about a sour backlash. So I think the next thing we'll do is have a look at the 3-jaw chuck, and we'll do a bit of maintenance on that. Basically a clean out. So I'm going to remove the jaws and get all the swarf that I can get, anything that's in the scroll, anything like that, and the teeth of the jaws, and give it all a good clean. So that's the 3 jaws removed, and as you can see there are all sorts of swarf and what have you going on in the jaws, and they're generally a bit grubby. So I'm going to clean all those up, and then we're going to look at the scroll in the chuck itself. Now, as you can see there's all sorts of bits and pieces down in the slots. Bring you in. You know, you can see all sorts of rubbish down in those slots, and I can see it in the scroll itself, so I'm going to give all that a good clean out. Now this, at this point, would be the place where if I had a compressor I could blow it all out quite you know, a lot better, but I'm just going to have to use a brush and rotate the scroll with a chuck key. You can see there's all sorts coming out of here. I've got a bit of WD-40 sprayed on this brush, but I'm just trying to get as much out as I can. There is actually some swarf up in the tunnel of the lathe. We'll push that out in a minute, give that a clean out. Probably best take the chuck off for this. Now you could strip the chuck all down, but I haven't long stripped it all down and cleaned it all out inside and done it off camera. And surprising, I've only done, you know, a couple of hours work, and I've got a fair amount of bits and pieces and detritus in there. So what I'll do is rotate the scroll. Probably best to do this on the bottom jaw here, and try and get as much of the junk out of there as possible. And that's looking a lot better already. Just see a bit in there. Longer brush, a bit of a Ken Dodd brush. I'll get in a bit deeper. You can see more bits coming out. Okay. Right. Piece of paper. Good old blue roll. I do find that if I'm going to leave the lathe for a day or so, basically what I do is I'll put a bit of oil on my hands and I'll just roll my hand around the chuck just to give it a coat, normally with the jaws in, but I'll just wind them in. I'll just run my hand around the chuck just to make sure that there's a smear of oil on it to stop any surface rust coming. And on occasions when I have forgotten to do it, certainly during the winter months, because I'm working in a shed, I find that I do get surface rust build up on here pretty quickly, but normally I'll just pop the jaws out and a little bit of light Scotch-Brite, and it just takes it away. So yeah, I'm going to be working on this today, so I don't need that smear of oil so much. But yeah, it's had a smear of oil. So I've cleaned all the jaws, and the jaws are numbered 1, 2, 3, and they will go in the corresponding holes. Now in my chuck, I have a number 1 there, 2 stamped there, and 3 stamped there. So if I bring number 1 to the top, I'll grab the jaw that's got number 1 written on it. You see that? Yeah, number 1 written on it there. And I'll take the chuck key and I'll just wind the scroll around until I see the start of the scroll. Don't know whether that picks up. Let's see if I can bring you in a bit closer. Right, can you see the scroll just starting there? So I'll wind that back out of the window of the slot, drop jaw number 1 in, give my chuck key half a turn and make sure it's captured. Then I'll rotate round to number 2 jaw to the chuck, do exactly the same, wait till the scroll comes round, take it back out of the way and drop in number 2, holding it down, half a turn and it's captured, round to number 3. Exactly the same, bring the scroll round, you can see the start of the scroll, wind it back out of the window, in with the jaw and half a turn. So that's all 3 jaws back in their correct spot. Let me just wind it into the centre. And there we are, that's the 3 jaws back in. Now, on the chuck, you do have this little oil point here. Now, I'm working with WD-40 and all sorts all the time, and everything's fairly oily in there, and I did use WD-40 on the brush. I'm not a huge believer in over-oiling the chuck, because you find when you're running at high speeds, it'll flick oil out through, you know, all the outer grooves and what have you, and it'll be spraying oil, literally, hold on, you know, it will spray oil off the chuck, all up the back of the lathe, all over you, all over the camera, that sort of thing. It takes very little. You know, if I went one little squirt like that, and I'll do that probably once a week, or certainly every time I clean it all out, which, you know, probably recommend you do every, you know, if you start to feel any notchiness in the chuck, anything like that, where you've got bits of swarf in the jaws, just take them out, give it all a clean, and away to go again. So yeah, I mean, that's just a routine chuck maintenance without stripping it all apart. When I put it on, as you've seen me do before, clean it really well in the back, tighten it down, what have you, with a smear of oil in the back, just to, you know, keep those surfaces coated. But yeah, I mean, that's routine chuck maintenance without going into great detail of stripping the chuck down, you know, which would be a sort of annual thing to get grease in the splines and what have you. Yeah, so that's the chuck. So one other little thing I'll do now I'm here is I'll just put a bit of oil along the whole length of the lead screw. There we are. So you can see bits of dirt are coming out from under my carriage, and my bed is all now nicely oiled. I'll just work the carriage back and forth. So we've done the tailstock, we've done the lead screw on the tailstock end, we've oiled the lead screw itself, all the bedways, lubed all the oil points. I believe there is one at the back here. I don't know if I can get to that. Let's have a look. I can. Can't say I go in the back there that often. And we'll give that one a shot of oil as well. Right, there we go. Okay, so we'll remove the back cover, just undo the 2 hand wheels on the back here. Pull it away out the way, and as you can see there's various oil and grit and what have you in there, and we'll clean that out before we put it back together. So I'll just place that to one side. Now, if I put too much grease and oil all over these gears. I mean, they are, as you can see, coated with oil at the moment. If you put too much on, it flicks all over the place, more than it has already. As you can see, there's a bit of flicking. It actually contaminates the belts, and if you get a lot of oil and what have you on these pulleys and around the belts, you will get a bit of belt slip if you're not up to complete tension. So yeah, just try and keep oil away from the belts. I mean, there's a bit of greyness on them, but they're not particularly, well, there is a little bit on that one. I may give these a little clean as well at the same time. But let's talk about lubrication. This gear just runs on this fixed shaft and is lubricated through the hole in the end. Exactly the same with this one. This one not, because the gear is fixed to the shaft. However, behind this gear, in here, I'll give you a close-up, is another oil point, which is this end of the lead screws lubrication. So, again, the centre pulley rotates in here, and I believe you can lubricate that one as well. So, I've always done a bit of lube on it. I don't know if there are bearings in there or not, but a couple of squirts in that one. Don't need to do that one. This one certainly. Couple of squirts. This one. Couple of squirts in the end. And I'll see if I can bring you in and show you this oil point down here. Yeah, you can just about see the oil point, which is the headstock end of the lead screw. And again, this bottle with a cranked end. Couple of squirts in there as well. So we've oiled the oil nipple in through the end of this shaft, into the end of this shaft, and I've also gone in through the end of this shaft as well. Now, I do use some spray grease on the gears, which is a motorcycle chain lube, that sort of thing. Doesn't actually need any at the moment, but you can use a spray grease on them. That's sort of anti-fling, that sort of thing. And it obviously it won't flick all over the place because it's quite a heavy duty spray grease. I think I've got a can here somewhere. Let's see if I can bring it into shot. Let's have a little look. Yeah, I got this stuff. I think it was Halford's, something like that. Give it a good shake, spray it on, let the propellant evaporate before switching it on, and it does go quite sticky and thick then. So yeah, that's the grease I use. When I strip it all down and clean all the gears, I then re-grease it with this spray grease. So that's all lubricated up now. Cleaned all the worst of the spray and what have you out of the cover. Back on with the cover. It's a little bit fiddly to fit this, but it's just, if you find the right spot, you line it up here, and it does go on fine. Tighten the two hand wheels. And that's the lubrication of a lathe. So on the subject of lubrication, my wife tells me that I don't drink enough water. And I tell her that I do. I drink copious amounts of water. It just happens to have malt, wheat, barley in it, that sort of thing. Anyway, no, I'm only joking. I've been told I have to drink 750 ml of water every day and work my way up to 2 of these a day. So I've got this water bottle and it's got 750 ml of water in it, and I've got to try and drink 2 of these a day. So, yeah, I mean, it's just taking up lager room as far as I'm concerned, but, you know, anything to keep them happy. So I think I'm going to start by doing an upgrade on this compound slide. So first thing I'm going to do is remove it from the lathe. So I've stripped it down, and it's actually 20 individual parts that make it up. Obviously, the first thing I'm going to do is add another 2 screws for the gib here and here. Now it's 120 mil long, middle one's 60/60. These are 20 mil from the end, so I've gone 40 mil from the end for both of these, and on the same height. So I'm going to add another 2 screws, and I'm going to open them all up from M4 to M5, just something a little bit more positive. And now I know it's not as fine a thread, but I have M5 screws, so I'm going to open them all up to M5. So that's the 5 holes tapped, M5. Now you'll see on the original gib screws that they had a profile turned on the end. And that's what fitted in the 3 grooves in the gib with an angle. So what I'll do is on my M5 bolts, I'll replicate that length and that shape on the end of my M5 bolts, just to pick up on these 3. And that's what actually retains the gib to stop it sliding out. If it didn't have those detents or pockets in the back of the gib, then as you wound back and forth, the gib would be sliding back and forth in and out. So the middle one is eventually going to be a locking screw, and these 2 will just have a ball end which will push on the gib, and these 2 will be replicated to the same profile. So yeah, I'm thinking I will replicate the center one so that it holds the gib in the same way, but the 2 end ones will be replicated, and these 2 will just be ball ended on the end. So I stoned off all the maintenance services, the gib, make sure there was no high spots, that sort of thing, all the dovetails, all the flat areas, with an oil stone and some, very fine oil stone with oil. Give it all a very good clean, oiled it all up, put it back together. I've done a sort of basic adjustment on my gib screws. As you can see, it runs nice and freely. I dare say as it sort of settles into position, I may need to give them all a further nip. We'll see how we do as we get along, but certainly it does seem to feel a lot smoother than it did before without movement. Before, with the 3 screws, I did have to carve them fairly tight to stop movement on the compound, and it was actually quite stiff, but it's nowhere near as stiff this time. I think because I've got more of an even push on this gib and I'm not sort of bending it in any way. So yeah, we'll see how we get on with that, but I think all in all, quite happy with the improvement. So I was sat in the shed and the sun came out, and I thought, you know what, let's go down our local beach just for a walk along. Now it is a bit misty, as you can see, it's quite misty up the far end there. This is Newgale Beach, beautiful sandy beach, great surfers beach this one, and we're about 5 or 6 miles from St David's in Pembrokeshire here. So that's Newgale Beach anyway. It is quite warm, but it's a bit breezy. And of course no beach would be complete without fun. When we get winter storms here, it blows all these stones, which is just like a great big stone embankment, and it blows them right down onto the road, and the road ends up having to be closed. But without this embankment, when they do get winter storms, all the properties and everywhere else will be flooded. There's a surf shop there. There's a cafe and a garden centre up there. And the road heads off up over the brow of the hill. So this is Newgale, and as you can see, it's quite misty up the end there this morning. It seems to be a bit of a fog blowing off the sea, but having said that, I think it's about to come to an end. So I told you I drink water, guys, just got a few additives in it, that's all. What a ripper. So this is interesting. It's what's known locally as the Teletubbies house. And it's very foggy up here. It's quite high up above Druidston Haven. Just thought I'd share that with you guys. As you can see, it's very eco. It's all built underground. So it's sort of self-warming, that sort of thing. And I think many moons ago it did appear on Grand Designs.